Hey friends, this is Ricky coming to you from the back porch. Thanks for joining me. Let me share this with the group. And I think that worked. Someone's here. Is that Izzy? Thanks for joining me, Izzy. I'm gonna wait just a few minutes for people to join in. Hey Brianna, thanks for coming. Hope you're doing well. I missed last week. Sorry I wasn't here, but I was on vacation, taking a little time off. And boy, y'all really, I can't even make a joke. I was gonna make a stupid joke, I decided not to. Hey Bobby. So while we're waiting on people to join in, let me just make one real quick announcement, housekeeping. We are moving to phase 3 this week at church, which means we will have, everybody's invited, all vulnerable member households, everyone. Hey Josh, hey Isabel, what was the best thing I ate? I had a really good tiramisu one night at a restaurant called Tavula. So anyway, we are all going to be, everybody's welcome back to worship. We're going to send out an email right now, or today we'll send out a registration email. If we have more than 125 people tell us they're coming, then we will have 2 services. So y'all need to let us know if you're coming or not, so we know whether to add that second service or not. Okay? Well, today what I want to talk about is mourning, a time of national mourning, and the sadness that we are all going through. So I want to read to you from the book of Job. And what I want to talk about, obviously, is the protests, the violence against George Floyd, the protests, the riots, and really, let me read the text first, and then we'll get started. Hey, Boyd. This is from the book of Job. If you are unfamiliar with the story, Job is tested by the Lord. He is Satan takes him into his hands and just kills his family, takes away his lands and his cattle, and attacks his body, gives him painful sores. So everything that is dear to Job is taken away from him. He is traumatized heavily, and we hear about his friends. They say this in Job chapter 2, verse 11. When 3 of Job's friends heard of the tragedy he had suffered, they got together and traveled from their homes to comfort and console him. Their names were Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamanite. When they saw Job from a distance, they scarcely recognized him. Wailing loudly, they tore their robes and threw dust into the air over their heads to show their grief. Then they sat on the ground with him for 7 days and nights. No one said a word to Job, for they saw that his suffering was too great for words. No one said a word to Job, for they saw that his suffering was too great for words. There's so much wisdom in that, friends. Let me start by saying, if you are one of my African American friends, if you are the mother of an African American child, if you've adopted a multiracial child, if you are experiencing this tragedy from that perspective, I am so sorry. I love you, and I want to support you, and I wish there were more that I could do, but I just want you to know I love you. That's all I can say. I can't say anything more. I'm sorry. I do have a lot of things to say to people who look like me. Okay? You know who you are. I have a lot of things to say to the white Southern Christian in America right now. And what I want to say to you is this. You need to follow the example of Job's friends and be quiet. You do not know how anybody else is feeling. You do not understand the trauma, the feeling of trauma after trauma after trauma of seeing people suffer because they look like you. You don't know how that feels. Please do not cheapen the experience by pretending that you know how it feels. Please don't criticize people for being emotional when they need to be rational. Just be quiet. Basically, what we're going through as a nation right now is a nationwide funeral. We are mourning the loss, the tragic loss of a man. And in the midst of that, we're mourning with our friends. And when you go to a funeral, think of it like this. If you went to a funeral of somebody who died in a car wreck, would you walk in and see the mom crying and say to her, I don't know what you're so emotional about, just fasten your seatbelt? Of course not. Of course not. You would just mourn with her. You would just be sad with her. You would just weep with her. We as a church, as a culture, as a race, need to learn how to shut up. That's not all we need to do, but that's where we need to start. Why do we need to start there? We need to start because we don't know the trauma. We need to start with being quiet. Secondly, because our hearts can't be trusted. Bianca explained this to me a few minutes ago. I thought she did it beautifully. We were talking about why we have such a hard time just accepting facts, uncomfortable facts. And she said this, I thought it was genius. She said, when I heard that Bill Cosby was drugging and raping people, I refused to believe it because I didn't want to live in a world where that happened. And because I didn't want to live in a world where that kind of thing happened, I refused to believe that I did live in a world where that kind of thing happened. We need to understand that there are things that happen in this world that are evil and awful. And we do, in fact, live in a world where they happen. And we need to stop trying to justify them to ourselves or explain them away so that we can be more comfortable. We have to accept the painful reality that we live in a world where terrible things happen, where people are beaten up and intimidated by those who are supposed to be law enforcement officials occasionally. Often, maybe. And it's sad, and it's wrong. And we just need to not trust our own heart with our desires to justify things. Be quiet. We need to be quiet because things are complex. Right now, our nation is in a huge upheaval. And there are all kinds of things going on. There are massive, peaceful, law-abiding demonstrations going on all over the country. I have personal friends who were at demonstrations in Orlando, in Houston, in Washington, D.C., in Memphis, in Tulsa, in Phoenix. I've got personal friends who've been in all those places, and all I have heard from them is that they were amazingly quiet and law-abiding. They were even gospel-rich places. But we also have riots going on. The two aren't necessarily coming from the same group of people. They're typically not the same groups of people. Some are, some aren't. It's complex. There are riots going on because people are feeling despair because they don't see that these racial issues are ever going to get fixed. There are riots going on because people are just angry, and they have been angry for months because the coronavirus has forced them to stay inside and not get what they deserve and not have any expression. Hey, Matt. And so they just want to lash out at something. There are people rioting because, frankly, they're 19, 20-year-old suburbanite. A lot of the videos I've seen have been white kids who are just mad, and it's kind of fun to go out and break a window. There are all kinds of reasons why people are rioting. None of them are good. But don't try to just group everybody into one group and say that's what's going on. You don't know. Just be quiet. It's okay to be quiet. It's okay to say we don't know. And please don't criticize people for being emotional. And okay, like I said, I'm talking to my people. Let's stop doing the white man thing and explaining everything. Okay? Stop mansplaining. Stop fixing everything. Nobody wants you to fix everything. If you think the answer to racism in America is simple, hush. Shh. Put your little finger over your mouth. You are wrong. It is not simple. It is a 1,000-year-long problem. It goes deep and it is profound, and it's not something that people should just get over. If you think the answer is that people should just get over it, shh, 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 hush. You don't know what you're talking about, so stop talking. My first piece of advice for my people, if you want to be part of the solution and not part of the problem, is be quiet. You don't know what you think you need. You don't know as much as you think you do. A second part of the solution would be to learn. Hey, it's time to start learning. If you've never read a Christian book by a black Christian author, I'm sorry, you just have no excuse. It's time to do that. Can you do that for me, please? Personal appeal, I'm begging you. My life was changed 22 years ago when I picked up a book by Spencer Perkins called More Than Equals. I had a seminary professor recommend it. I refused to read it because I just knew too much that I didn't need to read anything written by black men. I was racist at the time. I confess that with much shame. But I finally picked that book up, and as I was reading Spencer Perkins describe what his life was like, watching his own father beaten mercilessly by policemen while he was in prison, forced to watch. As I listened to him describe and what it's like to really truly understand the parable of the Good Samaritan from an African American point of view, I felt like my heart was being ripped out and I was changed. I felt like I was being changed. And I'm begging you, before you speak, listen and learn. Learn. Just let the African Americans around you instruct you. Go pick up a book by John Perkins. Go pick up Justice Will Roll Down. Go pick up any of his great books. Go read his articles. They're all over the internet. Just look up the name John Perkins and start reading. Read More Than Equals. Read Adolphus Weary. Read any of these great authors, these Christian men who love Jesus, who love you, and who want you to understand. Please, before you start speaking, shh. Learn. Learn. Thirdly, after you've been quiet, after you've sat and listened, after you've learned, say to your African American friends, I'm sorry. Learn to apologize. Not even apologize, yes, but just commiserate. I know you guys. I know you. I'm one of you. I know when I said that, some of you got mad. Like, well, I haven't done anything. I never owned a slave. Didn't say you did. Okay? You're kind of wrong and simplistic about that, but I'm not even going to go there right now. When my brother died in a car accident, over 1,000 people came to see us during the visitation. Every single one of them said, I'm sorry. None of them were involved in the car wreck. None of them. But they all said, I'm sorry. Why? They were commiserating. They were saying, I'm sorry we live in a world where brothers die in car wrecks. I'm sorry that you're so sad. I'm sorry that you've been traumatized. Empathize with people. Just love them and say, I'm sorry, brother. I'm sorry we live in this world. I'm sorry, sister. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, my sister who has African American children. I'm sorry, Emily Hubbard, that you have to raise children in a world where they're going to be looked at differently and treated differently. And that's painful. And I'm sorry. It's okay just to say, I'm sorry. You're not saying you did it. Nobody is saying you did it. We're just saying that it's hard. We see that it is hard to live in a world like this. So can we be quiet? Can we learn? Can we let our African American brothers and sisters teach us? Can we say that we're sorry? Can we learn to pray? Guys, are you praying? Right? If you've never gotten into praying for your governors and your mayors, would you just allow your assist? Yes, Josh, I will definitely recommend the authors in just a second. Hey, Glenn, thanks for joining. Sorry, you got me on a roll here. Can you imagine how hard it is to be the mayor of a city where on one hand you want to empathize with your peaceful protesters, you want to bless them, you want to let them know, I hear you, I feel you, I want to change, I want to make changes, and on the other hand you've got rabble-rousers who need to be corralled so that you can protect the very African-American businesses that they say they care about from the riots. I mean, how hard that must be. Pray for your mayors. Pray for your chiefs of police. Pray for your policemen. Pray for God to raise his church up and that his kingdom would come, that he would glorify his son through this pain. Pray for healing. Pray for healing. Pray that our country would be healed from these deep, profound wounds that we have ignored. Pray for that. And after that, after you've hushed, after you've listened, after you've learned, after you've comforted, after you've prayed, then begin to act. Do something. Can we all just do something? Give money to a good cause. Some of you are comfortable going out and marching in peaceful demonstrations. Great. Some of you are uncomfortable doing that. That's fine. Almost after every city in this country needs people on cleanup crews going around with garbage bags picking up after the demonstrations, after the riots. Go do that. Volunteer with Boys Club. Volunteer with Girls Club. Volunteer, if you're here in Tulsa, go to Crossover Community Outreach and ask them, how can I help? What can I do to help? Go to Tulsa Youth Ranch. Offer to help. If you can't give 1 hour a week, give a couple hours a month to go and build to help with that camp. Go. There are. Go give money to an African American church. Go give money to an interracial church. Do something. Some things you may not be comfortable with. Maybe, this political cause might be too liberal for you and you're uncomfortable with that. Okay, give to something else. Give to your local public school. Donate books. Do something. Just do something. If everybody would just do something, just a little. One little something doesn't seem like much, but if 300 million of us would do something, that's a lot of something. I think that would help. It's hard, but I think it would help. So that's my position on where we are. Let's learn to be quiet, learn to listen, learn to pray, learn to comfort, learn to empathize, and then try to find something that we can do. I'm going to, on this video, I'm going to tag it with some books that I think will be helpful for you. And I'm going to tag it with some ministries that I love, that I know need your help. I love you guys. I know that feeling of helplessness, that anxiety that so many of us are struggling with. And I want you to know I feel it too. It's overwhelming at times. I'm fighting despair personally. I think you are too. Thank you, whoever keeps hitting their heart button. It really does encourage me. It may seem like a small thing, but man, when I see those thumbs up and hearts, it touches my heart. I appreciate y'all. I love you, and let's pray for a better tomorrow. Okay, guys? Love you so much. Hey, Kathy Street Crawford, good to see you. Schwan, Dan Gurley, an old friend from college, love you to death. Thanks, Josh. Jenna Booth, man, I miss you. Just neighborhood I've been the same since y'all left. Ella Peterson, love you. Bevan, who else here? Amanda, thanks for joining. Glenn, thanks for joining. Melissa, hope you're still here. Carla, love you. Miss you. All right, guys. I think we're out. I think we're done. Love you guys. I'm going to finish up. Bye.